Great day, everyone. We're back at it again, trying. I'm not sure why it would not allow me to allow this to be shared, but we are going to try it again, nevertheless. And if not, we're going to just roll with it, and people may have to get this on the backside of everything. I'm not sure why it does this when get ready to go live on Facebook. So we're going to try it again. Otherwise, we're going to bring Miss uh, Buffalo Taylor, sorry, Miss Taylor, Kelly Taylor, on, and we're going to get started. Let's see. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now we're cooking with fish grease. I don't know why it does that, but nevertheless, thank you for those. If you could share and tag those that you're connected with, if you can tag them in this live, we're going to get started. This is Anchored by Grace, and we're excited to be able to have on tonight. We have with us Miss Kelly Taylor, who is going to be sharing self care while grieving. And I'm super excited because I know just by people recommending her, I know that certainly she has some information that is going to be beneficial for us on tonight. And so I'm super excited that she is here, going to be able to share with us about what it looks like to grieve, how you, the importance of you taking care of yourself while you are grieving, because we can sometimes forget about ourselves and be concerned more about others. And so tonight, I want to be able to offer this tool to those of us who are a part of the grief community, to be able to just to join in, to ask those questions, to gain some insight and some wisdom on what it looks like to grieve. And I'm super happy to have our guest with us on tonight. I'm getting ready to bring her on, and we're going to give her a great big welcome. And so I'm texting this to one other person, and then we are going to get started, because I know that there's some information that Miss Taylor is able to share with us on tonight. So I am getting ready to bring her on. I'm super excited. Yay, we have Miss
Yay.
Taylor
Thank
with
you.
us on tonight. Thank you for joining
You're
us.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. This is our virtual platform called Anchored by Grace. Have been doing this now for 6 months. And so I'm super excited to have you. I know that there is so much that you must have to share with us on tonight, whether it is from your education or from your experience, because with so many people tagging you and saying, okay, you need to get her, she's your person. And so I'm super excited to have you on tonight. So if you would just take a moment and just share with us a little bit about who you are and the work that you do, and then we will
Sure.
navigate from there.
Sure. Well, I am Kelly Buffalo Taylor. I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm a mama, part fire, part softness. I just believe in showing up for people, when they're in pain, if they're in joy, having joy or in between. I am a certified grief counselor. My journey started very, very long ago in this field, 1999. But between then and mid 2000s, I did a certification in grief counseling, a human service degree, and where my emphasis was death and dying, and then a master's degree in public relations. So I am everything death and dying. I work in the hospice field now as a
Mhm.
hospice worker. Um, I do it all with a smile. And
Yes.
I shared with you before, even in my own grief,
Yeah.
I have the tenacity to still show up for others, which surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. I totally get it. that we are sometimes called to do the things that we feel like somebody should be helping us, but I believe that God calls a certain sector of people to do the things that need to be done because he
Yeah.
know that they will trust him through the process, even
Yeah.
in some of our hard moments. And so I want to say to you, thank you so much for your yes, for not only helping those that you're working with, but helping those in the community of grief aside from your daily work. I know sometimes I can only imagine that it must be, I don't know. And so maybe I want to just ask that, how is that for you to do this on a daily basis, but then help people outside of what your 9 to 5 work, if you will? How does that work for you?
I used to say that it was quite kind of tricky, especially last year. I lost my sister, and I
Hmm.
was, working. But I walk my talk,
Hmm.
and I am a huge component of self care to where
Yeah.
it probably looks almost selfish.
Hmm.
But I believe in taking care of myself,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
means, my grieving self, especially.
Hmm.
So I think that's how I do it. I do honor my grief and I honor my space and myself. When I know that it's too much, I know how to stop.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that's good because sometimes when people, like, I guess, with a personality, a makeup, a DNA such as yourself and even myself, you got to know when there's a line to draw the line
Yeah.
and to stop and to take a moment for yourself and not feel bad about refraining from helping others to take that moment for yourself. And
Yeah.
so, on tonight, which is what our topic, our discussion is going to be about. And so, for those of you who are joining us, I have with us tonight Miss Kelly Buffalo Taylor, who is a licensed professional therapist, and she's going to be helping us to walk through, to guide us through what it looks like for those of us who are part of the grief community to make certain that you take time for yourself. So if you're joining us now, I'm going to ask that if you would like this live, if you would share it, tag some people who you feel like will benefit from this, because we're not selfish people. If we were selfish, we would not be doing what we're doing, because we would make sure that we would just be concerned about ourselves. But rather than that, we are selfless. Like, we want to make certain that everyone gets what they actually need. And so, with us talking tonight about self care, I want to be able to jump in and kind of talk about, if you will, what does it look like to have some simple tools, some daily practices for the person who is grieving. And for me, I'm going to pause and say, when grief is the loss of a person, place, or a thing. So
Yeah.
that could be the loss of a job, the law of the divorce, having to relocate, losing, your pet, whatever the case, a hurricane, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what are some simple tools or practices that you can give to the person who is grieving to help them during that process?
So I'm going to correct you from the intro just a second ago. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am a certified grief counselor.
Thank
But
you.
but thank you.
Thank you. Look, that's what people call me, therapist. I'm like, no, 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 no. So my
No.
apologies. I should have stuck to my flyer, and that would give me everything right. But thank you. Thank
Yes,
you
thank
for,
you.
because we don't want to mislead people.
No, we don't. And I do have one of those on my roster, though. I can't do this work without having my own therapist. I like to just start first by saying, real simple, honor your energy. When you
Mhm.
have a loss, as you mentioned, all those losses, you have to honor your energy. Your energy changes because grief can literally suck the life out of you.
Mhm.
I always tell people sometimes that I feel like I'm fighting for my life
Mhm.
to just move to the next day. But you don't have the energy that you used to have pre grieving. So you have to know that the grieving, it takes over your mind, your body, your sleep, your appetite. And so then you have to feed it and nurture it
Mm-hmm.
by doing things, even if it's something simple as changing your routine of when you get up out of bed in the morning. Or I say sometimes it's just breathing. If that's all you can do in a day is just breathe, that's all you can do.
Yes.
But you have to find, I like to say, like micro moments of joy to take
Mm-hmm.
care of your grief. And that could look like 30 seconds of some type of relief. If it's listening to some music, putting on a pair of fuzzy socks. I started drinking my coffee outside in the morning, which is like luxurious, but it
Ah.
sets the tone for my day, something that small,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm
Mm-hmm.
still grieving.
Right. Right.
So that's something simple. But checking in with yourself, when you wake up, start from your feet all the way to your head. Like, what do my feet feel like? What do my knees feel like? What are my hips? How's
Mm-hmm.
my stomach? Just check in with yourself. Um, Gosh, do something as simple as watching reels. I reels like TikTok. I like TikTok. I don't know. Do you do TikTok?
I do. I'm kind of in between. I'm getting a little better at it. That's where I'm trying to start my grief stuff there. But
Yeah,
it can, you can get sucked in real quick.
you
What
can.
But laughing, just the funnies of things.
I find that if you want to give yourself a little break from sadness,
Mm-hmm.
find those things that make you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
I think those silly videos of people spooking others and scaring them, and oh, I can laugh so hard, and it's like, did I just laugh? Oh, that felt so good.
Yeah.
And then give yourself permission to do that and don't feel guilty about it. But you've got to lower those cortisol levels. You got to get out of that tight
Yeah.
sadness some kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
however big or small it may be, find that. And as simple as it is, like something that takes little to no effort,
Yeah.
like just sitting outside in the sun.
Yeah.
Sometimes those small little things, and then you do it over and over again. As long as it's healthy,
Mm-hmm.
do
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah. And I heard you say giving yourself permission. And sometimes when we're grieving, giving ourselves permission to do things can be a challenge
Yeah,
because there's this I think we do it to ourselves. I know I did it to myself initially. Is we think that life is supposed to stop
yeah,
at the moment that we experience
yeah,
grief, and that
yeah,
we're not supposed to laugh, that we're not supposed to enjoy things. And
yeah,
I know I struggled with even going to gatherings
yeah,
where like I love to line dance. I don't always know all of them, but I mean I try. But it was a challenge for me to go places because I didn't want people to see me and judge me.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so when you said give yourself permission, can you just share a little bit more about what giving yourself permission, what that looks like for the
yeah,
person that may be listening right now or may catch this later and may be stuck in that place because they're feeling guilty
yeah,
about doing things that gives them that small of a joy.
yeah,
Can you just speak a little bit more about what giving yourself permission looks like?
yeah. You made the statement that you felt like you were going to be judged, and that's the part we all have to get past. Not
Mm-hmm.
worrying what other people feel. Your grief is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
It's just your grief. How you grieve and do your grief is not the way someone else is going to do theirs. So you have to first tell yourself that this belongs to me and no one else.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say you need these boundaries, like hard stop boundaries when you're grieving. You don't have to be strong every day, but you just
Mm-hmm.
have to be honest. You
Yeah.
have to be honest with yourself and how you want yourself to feel. um, and I'm probably not answering this the way you've asked me, um, but more importantly, you have to do what feels best for you, first of
Mm-hmm.
all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
don't put any pressure on yourself. And if you feel guilty about, having any type of pleasure or laughing or whatever, then don't do it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. And that's okay, because that's just not where you are right
Mm-hmm.
then. And no one can say, "Oh, it's okay." They want you to they would want you to feel this, or they would want you to do that. I believe my sister wanted me to grieve and wear black for months and months.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
refused. I did wear this big old hat to her funeral, and I don't wear those things like that. But I knew that she was one of those persons that wanted everybody to fall out at the funeral, because she said it and she meant it. But
And see, and that's so funny because my son, he was, I would say he was a smidget of arrogance, and and so there was, I hosted this conference, this women's conference, and my friend, she came and she said, I really feel like Darius is saying to me to tell you that it's because of him that you're drawing all these people together. I said, that sounds like him. That sounds about right. I said, that arrogant rascal in the midst of this. And I said, yeah, that sounds about right. And so
yeah,
we
yeah,
know, we know the people that, and
mhm,
we honor them the way that we know
yeah,
that they would want to be honored. And
yeah,
so, that's what I say to people is do what you know they would want you to do. And only
yeah,
you know what they would want.
right,
And so do what's best. And like you said, if you're not ready, then that's okay, to not be ready to laugh.
yeah.
But you can't, I say to people, you can't stay in that place too long.
No, you cannot. I was gonna say that too. Like, if you stay there too long, then you're gonna need some assistance, and
Mm-hmm.
don't feel ashamed to
Mm-hmm.
find
Mm-hmm.
someone to talk
Mm-hmm.
to help move you past that point,
Um,
because
eh, go
you're
ahead. Go ahead.
here. You're here, and you're gonna continue to engage, and you have to show up as your best self at
Mm-hmm.
some point.
Yes. And so I know with you saying that, it's leading me to this question. So for the person who may be watching right now or may catch this later, and they may say, you know what, I don't need therapy. I'm just sad. I'm just sad. And so how do we gently, because I know there's a fine line of, the different stages of grief. And I know people go through them. They don't go in the same order. But how do we gently say to them when we can physically see that they are really either still in mourning or grieving very, very badly? Like, how do we say to them, you know what? You probably need a little, as you say, a little assistance. How do we gently
Yeah.
do that?
Well,
Or is that possible?
it depends on your relationship with the person. It depends on how open they are. But I would say to let them know that, hey, unfelt grief or a prolonged grieving can really do some damage to you
Mm-hmm.
physically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you don't move through that process and you stay too long,
Mm-hmm.
you can become sick. Diseases occur.
Mm-hmm.
That heartbreak syndrome is real.
Yeah.
So you have to check in and say, hey, are you ready to get busy living? Or are you trying to get busy dying? What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that, I think that is key, is the relationship that we hold with people that
Yeah,
we're close to, and I think it aligns with having accountability with
yeah,
someone. If you had the relationship before, then they should be open,
yeah,
I feel, to have those questions, to be able to say, hey, you know what, you, it's been it's been 3 months now and you're still in the room.
yeah,
Like, and every time I come to visit you, it's complete darkness. Like, is there a reason for that? Like, and so I know that sometimes that there's a very fine line. And there was one thing that I say to people when I'm hosting grief support is I try to encourage them or gently challenge them to not to stay in the place called stuck, where
yeah,
grief found them, because that could easily happen for people. And so, that's one of the things that we don't want to happen. And so, how does friends or family best support someone who's grieving without saying the wrong thing? Like, because I know uh, that's kind of touchy sometimes. And, we probably talked about this each month. And so, with different people who come on Anchored by Grace, like, how do we best support someone without saying the wrong thing?
Shameless plug, give them my book.
Okay, go ahead.
Sometimes, give them materials, give them books, give them names of people they might be able to call, give them Facebook pages, just, say, hey, try this, try this, try this.
Hmm.
That's all you can do is make some suggestions to help them. But,
Hmm.
ultimately, sometimes people need to see somebody who looks like them.
Yeah, yeah.
So find somebody that might know to say, "Hey, I know someone who lost their husband. You want to? Can you? She's willing to talk to you. Would you like to talk to
Hmm.
her?
Hmm. 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 And so I know that there are times that people are very reluctant to go around people who are grieving because they're afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing,
Mhm.
or they don't know what to do, and or they don't know what to say. And so I know that they tend to, in a lot of cases, push back,
Yeah.
and because they don't want to say the wrong thing, and
Mhm.
they don't want to go, they feel like, if I should, like, I don't want to hug them because I don't want to make them sad. And so, those are some of the things that I have come into contact with people and saying, you know what, I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing,
Yeah.
And so, what it, or have you come across any persons, like, where you've had to coach them on how to maintain the relationship that they once had with someone who is currently grieving?
No, I have not had to do, not specifically, no. But it just makes me think about how much education people need
Mm-hmm.
to help them with the grieving people. That's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
always like one of the first questions that I get.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what should we do and what should we say? And
Mm-hmm.
the best thing is to just say hello. I don't know what to say, but hello. Say
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Don't just not say anything. And then
Mm-hmm.
ask them, are you hugging? And then hug.
Mm-hmm.
But people remember what you don't do. They're going to always remember who showed up and who didn't show up.
You listen,
You don't
and
forget.
that's why I say to people, if you had a relationship prior, maintain that same level of relationship as much as they allow.
Yeah.
So, because they will remember
Hmm.
who showed up for them,
Yeah.
and who did not show up for them
Mm.
as well, and probably more so who did not show up
Oh,
more
that's
than who
the
did.
that's the biggest part. They do remember who did not show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
May not remember, like you said, may not even remember who was there, but they never forget who wasn't there.
Because I think and I feel it's because of the relationship that was there prior to, like, potentially there was something there to make them think, you know what, I never saw them, or they never came around. And
Yeah.
so, I'm not sure, but I do like the idea of, of being able to educate people on how do you show up for people after grief,
Yeah.
because that is one of the biggest things that most people do they deal with, they struggle with. Well, what do I actually say?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, as it relates to, can you just give us more things as it relates to the person? Maybe somebody's just joining us right now. Of what does self care? What is that really? We talked about some joys. We talked about the joys, the small little things that we can actually do. But can you share more with what does self care looks like for the mom, maybe who has children, or self
Mhm.
care of maybe someone
Oh,
who
excuse
is
me.
still. spouses.
Mhm. So, I'm going to start with the mom who has children left at home.
Mm-hmm.
Being a mother, we're going to always be on. But I have had this conversation several times with mothers of children who are still in the home, and the mothers have to show them how to grieve. We don't
Mm-hmm.
do a good job with that.
Yep.
We we think that we're supposed to always be, well, we're always the nurturer and the protector, and we feel like we're protecting these children by not crying and not,
Mm-hmm.
expressing
Mm-hmm. That's
emotion.
good.
And it's very important that we let them see our tears, because it lets them know that it's okay that you miss your brother or you miss your father or whomever.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be real transparent with children. Excuse me. Um, for the, what was the other person, the other example
For
was?
I guess any family member, a spouse, how do we show up for when we're grieving, someone else, but we still have responsibilities for other people in the home.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that again. So, first of all, always think about that airplane, put your mask on first before securing others.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take care of yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with anything. Um, Allowing yourself time to breathe. It may mean that you have to get up a little earlier or go to bed a
Mm-hmm.
little later, but
Mm-hmm.
you owe it to yourself to give yourself the space and time to do something that makes you feel good. And even if it's just, giving a moment to cry in the shower, but you
Mm-hmm.
need an outlet. You have to release that. You being on autopilot does nothing for anybody else, because what's going to happen is grief is just sitting there waiting. It's just waiting to pounce on you.
Yeah.
So you can't ignore it. Um, Maybe you can't cook. Maybe you have a friend who is, I say you always need like different grief people, different
Mm-hmm.
people in your
Mm-hmm.
life. So you have that friend who always says, if you need something, call me. Sis, I can't cook tonight. Can you please, send something over? Or maybe you just DoorDash for the kids. I don't know, but do make it
Mm-hmm.
easy for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy for
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and don't put all these limits on yourself so that you can still take care of your children, take care of your husband, take care of your mom, whomever it is. But you have to be very selfish with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
can't say yes, yes, yes all the time. You're going to have to say no sometime, because Kelly needs some help. I'm just
That's
using
right.
myself. Kelly has to go in and refill.
I know I was telling, I think it was maybe last month, that last month's grief support. Like, we're so accustomed to when people say, "Hey, Pam, how are you?" I feel like I have to say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing okay. Thank you for asking,"
Mm-hmm.
rather than saying what is true. And then someone on the other hand may say, "Is there anything I can do for you?" This is the person who's asking, the grieving person. And so, what I have found is, rather than asking what can I do, is say, I can pick you up food tonight. Is there anything specific that you all would like? Because I
Yeah,
know sometimes people have a struggle with just thinking
yeah,
while they're
yeah,
grieving. And like you say,
yeah,
door dashing, for the kids, because I don't listen, I don't have the energy tonight. And
yeah,
so I
yeah,
think that comes with being open and honest about things. And that's just another tool of being able to provide that level of self-care,
yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah, that goes back to my statement that I said that you don't have to be strong every day, but you have to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
not being honest with yourself isn't helping you.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, having an outlet to, because we feel like we need to be strong. We
Yeah,
feel like I have to be strong for the family. I
yeah,
think that is a cultural thing that we deal with, is, what, you got to be strong. You have to be
yeah,
strong. But as you mentioned, that the daughter needs to see that mom cries, like, because why is mama not crying,
yeah,
like, and so I think, and then that creates something different for the child, because mom is struggling with something. So, I think it's very important for us tonight to to know, for the person who may be grieving, that may be watching, maybe you're just joining us right now. So I say thank you for tuning in to Anchored by Grace. And go ahead and like this live and share it so that other persons could see it. If not now, then later. But we're talking about what self-care looks like for the person who is grieving, the importance of it, and not feeling guilty about taking care of yourself. And so we want to just encourage you tonight to make sure that you're good, because if you're not good, then no one else in the house is going to be good. And so, we just want to make certain that everyone is taken care of. And so one of the questions that I would like to ask now is, what would you say to someone who feels like they're still grieving years later and wonders if something is wrong with them?
Yeah, well, nothing is wrong with you. However, comma, you probably did not do enough grieving, which happens all the time. I've had a client who 10 years later had to re-grieve.
Mm,
So sometimes you just have to really go and put yourself back to the very beginning and talk about from the day before it happened, or the week before it happened, the day it happened, the next day, and you have to just revisit and then
yeah.
see where you land.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've said is that you need to make certain, as you're actually grieving, if you cannot pass by a place where something happened,
Mhm.
then it's likely you're still grieving.
Yeah.
Like, and not that you're going to ever, like, I think people sometimes, and I don't know, you can help me out with this one, please do. Um, they have, like, if you can't pass by a location where something happened,
Hmm.
whether it was tragic or it's a memory of something, then I say you're still grieving. You've
Hmm.
not dealt with the matter. And so I think sometimes with people, like, there's a difference in being healed of someone not being here and
Yeah.
grieving. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does. But I would think that, well, you're never going to not grieve.
Right, right. Uh-huh.
And I call those moments like ambush moments.
Okay.
You're going around and you're like, oh my God. Like my sister in law, my brother in law was a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
And when she sees fire trucks, she's like, loses it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's been a year now. She probably doesn't do it as much, but it has come to her where she had problems with that. So I'm just going to say, if 3 years from now a fire truck is bothering you, then your grief is still too heavy.
That's
But
good.
if I had a child that died at the intersection of Natural Bridge and Kings Highway, I probably wouldn't even go that way, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think, if it was 20 years, I would always feel some way at that intersection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's okay that they have a grief moment, that it may never go away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that comes to my mind is my son was in the military. So one of the last memories that I had at the funeral was walking behind a coffin where they draped the flag.
Okay.
And so that was my last memory. So I went to a funeral and I didn't realize that this person was in the military. So when they draped the flag,
Hmm.
I
You
lost it.
lost it. Yeah. I would
Like,
have lost
everybody
it
was out of
too.
the church. I was still
Yeah.
in the church. And
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? Just give me a minute. I need to
Yeah.
gather myself.
Yeah.
I know what
Yeah.
has happened. I've recognized what happened. Is it was the last memory. And so so now I say to myself, I try to make myself be alert, be aware. Like,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead and look at the obituary. If it's somebody, like, I don't know everything about them. so that I can prepare myself that if they are in the military,
Yeah.
I can brace myself. I can put my feet down and I can say, okay, Pam, this is likely going to happen.
Yeah.
So you need to be
Yes.
prepared.
So okay, those are triggers and setbacks.
Uh-huh.
So with those for you, that is a trigger, and you're doing the what the scholars will tell you to have a conversation with yourself, prepare yourself. Somebody's trying to get in and won't let them get in. I wonder why. I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm trying to send somebody in. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Um, yeah, you have to have those, try to prepare yourself as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Will it work? Maybe,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not. It
Mm-hmm.
may take you a long time before you ever are a little comfortable seeing something like that, or you may never be comfortable. And that's
Yes.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with you. It is okay. But that will be always be a trigger for you.
Yeah. And so I think one of the things it helped me to realize that there are those moments, that I needed to prepare myself for to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that it doesn't catch me by surprise again. And
Yeah.
so it did work because I went to, sadly, earlier this year, my pastor passed away and he was in the military as well. So I was able to ground myself
Yeah.
so that it didn't catch me by surprise
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it did before. Like there
Uh-huh.
was still, as you said, the memory was there and there
Yeah.
was some tears flowing because that was the memory that I had. And so, so if I understand it correctly, the person that may be still grieving years later, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that moment as you're still, it may be something that you need to go back and have a conversation with yourself, which I why do you think that's so hard for people to deal with what happened in order to grieve?
Well, love. You're missing the person. You love that person, and uh what's the restrictive viewing? You don't have restrictive viewing, no?
No.
Okay. Um, yeah, it's just the love that you have for that person, and it's a trigger, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to do what you did. You have to try to always stay ahead of yourself and prepare as best as you can
Mm-hmm.
for those triggering moments, but you can't always do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So.
triggers exist. I mean, I don't sometimes they're there and they're not going to leave you. It's
Mm-hmm.
how you respond, and eventually you will respond. The goal is that you respond less emotionally
Mm-hmm.
than
Mm-hmm.
early onset.
So I know you've said that you experienced grief early on in the 90s, and then here most recently with dealing with the loss of your sister. Um, what keeps you hopeful as you walk alongside of others who are in pain, and especially with the line of work that you do? So dealing with your own grief, what helps you, I guess, to stay hopeful as you're walking with others who are dealing with something so painful?
First, I know myself. I have a natural propensity to be happy anyway. I walk with joy in my heart, and I have the love of God,
Mm-hmm.
and I love myself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not everybody is at that place.
Yes.
But I think that, for me, it's not always fair to ask me that because I do love myself a lot
Yeah.
and I deserve happiness. And
Mm-hmm.
so I try to share how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
how I live my life with others. Um, but I know that everyone doesn't feel the same way, but everyone is worthy and
Mm-hmm.
deserving of love and finding peace.
Yes, yes. And so I know that dealing with grief, no one really wants to have to. Um, no one really wants to have to uh, deal with it. And so, can you share any common misconceptions that you hear about the grieving process?
Well, that every people tend to think that we all do it the same way,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, People think that, especially like in the workplace, that you get these couple of days off, and you're supposed to come back, and you are fully engaged and ready to go, or it's 6 months and you're still feeling this way. No, grief isn't linear, so it goes like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Older people don't grieve, just I hear a lot of weird things. It's like, just because you're 80, yes, they're grieving too,
Yeah.
you know. And then children are resilient, but children don't forget.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to know, if you have a child in the house, how old they are, and then do some research yourself to see where the scholars say these children are at this age. How do they look at grief? Because children grieve.
Mm-hmm.
People think that they don't. They think, oh, they're okay. No, children
Mm-hmm.
do grieve. Yeah.
And so, can you, since you're on that, and we're talking about that right now, and you brought it up, in next month, we're going to be hosting our first kids therapeutic art and grief camp.
Good. Good.
Yes. And so, what would you say to the mom who is struggling to allow their child to attend?
Oh gosh. So I don't work with children,
You don't.
because
Okay.
no, because parents that take that stance, it upsets me,
Mm-hmm.
because your child deserves an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to ask, well, what are you doing? How are you tapping into their grief?
Mm-hmm.
What else have you allowed them to do, as
Yeah.
far as helping them? Yeah, I purposely have not dealt with children, because of all the other things that children
Mm-hmm.
are exposed to, or
Mm-hmm.
not a lack of.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take them all home and fight every parent. I can't. That's the fire in me.
Yes.
That's what I say. I'm
Yes.
part fire, part softness. I get real fiery in
Uh-huh.
situations like that, because
Yeah.
children, it's either deal with it now, or it's
Or
going to come out some other kind of way. You just don't know what that is going to be, and it's
mhm.
might not be good. Most
And
times
that's
it
the
isn't.
same thing. That's the same thing I say. And the only reason I know we were talking about self-care tonight, but when you mentioned that, it just made me think of that. Like, what were your thoughts about that? And so I'd love to hear any other thing that you want to share as it relates to self-care that we have
Yeah.
not addressed through questions or
Okay.
just in our discussion, that you could just share that could help that person who is struggling, whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, whether it's a family member who wants to help a person who is grieving.
Yes.
Anything that you feel like that someone could hear and say, you know what, that's good, and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna try this.
So I'm going to make it very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Treat your grief like a newborn baby. Or if you don't know how to take care of babies, maybe you taking care of a pet. Something that needs your help. Treat your grief like a newborn. And then
Mm-hmm.
think about, what does a newborn do? A newborn can't do anything on their own.
Mm-hmm.
You've never grieved like this before. You've never lost the son. You never lost the father. You never lost the mother. But this is the first time you've experienced this. So treat it like a newborn. Babies need, help me out, Pam. They need
They
sleep.
need, yep.
They
They
need
need
special
they
diets.
need milk. They need to eat.
Yeah, they need special diets. They need, so it might be that you need a schedule Put yourself on a sleep schedule, put yourself on a food schedule, put yourself on a play schedule. Just think of anything that a baby needs. A baby has to learn how to walk again. So maybe, you just have to, that means go outside, one foot in front of the other, exercise, do something,
Yeah,
but think of your grief as something new because it is. It is something outside of yourself. It's
right.
internal, but it's
Yeah.
something outside of you that requires all of your attention.
That's a great analogy. I've never heard it put that way before, to think of grief as a, like a newborn baby, treated as like, what is a newborn child actually needs, and those same things definitely lines up with, because after a while, I know I didn't want to eat, but at some point you got to put something
Yeah,
inside of you.
yeah.
At some point you got to get some kind of rest, even if
Mhm.
it's a couple of hours of rest. So that's a great analogy of thinking of grief as
It's a
uh
newborn. E-
newborn.
Even as letting the baby cry because the baby's lungs have to be developed. You must cry, to
Yeah.
cleanse yourself.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yes. And I want to ask you, um just I know I've heard of complicated grief and prolonged grief. Is that something that you could share with us tonight, to shed some light on what the differences are? In some simplistic form of the difference between prolonged and complicated grief.
So complicated could be um, where someone may be dealing with several losses at one time.
Okay.
It can be complicated in the sense of their livelihood has drastically changed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there is already some mental illness at play
Okay.
that makes it more complicated. The dynamics of their family unit makes it complicated. The prolonged is the person who, like you mentioned, 3 months and they're still in the room with the lights out.
Okay. 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 All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know that I've heard, that there's a normal grief, there's complicated and prolonged. And so, it's great to be able to put some sort of simplicity to what that looks like, that could help the person that may be struggling. And you may be hearing this now and you realize that, what, it's been a while since you've not showered. I mean, daily hygiene
Mhm.
is,
Yeah,
it's important.
yeah.
And so sometimes, people, I think for a moment it may be kind of normal, but it's not normal, if you will. I definitely wanted to mention what those different types of grief, what that looks like for someone. Are there any healthy ways that you would say that people can begin their process of grieving? What would you consider as healthy ways of grieving?
Not being afraid to mention their loved one's name.
Mm-hmm.
Just creating an environment that encompasses the loved one still.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're not here physically, they are still here spiritually, and creating, establishing your life without them, but with them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very healthy, but being able to, be honest with where you are in your grieving.
I know for some people it is. I've seen that there are some people who don't mention their loved one's name. On the opposite side, there are other people who they want to make certain that it is mentioned in the conversation. So that's definitely something, I think, a great way to be able to honor the person that we actually love.
Yeah.
Is not just always saying my son, but
Hmm.
saying his name.
Hmm.
And just being able to honor who he is.
And
What
it
I
gives
will
other
say,
people permission to say his name too, and knowing
yes.
that you feel good about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
you are the healthy person accepts the reality.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes, yes. And I know that our conversation has been going so great, and we are nearing an end here. And so, what I'd like to ask you is, in our final question tonight, is what would one thing you wish every grieving person could hear tonight?
That if you give yourself the time, you devote time to yourself,
Hmm.
it will be okay. It will hurt, but it will be okay. Um, Pay attention to how you're feeling. Be very selfish with how you feel. Create
Hmm.
some boundaries. Um, do what feels most comfortable for you. If you don't want to
Hmm.
go to the family gathering because you don't feel right, don't go.
Hmm.
But be very honest with yourself. Don't push yourself too fast.
Yeah. And so, what I will say, just from our conversation, one of the things that I feel like would be a great takeaway for those who are listening and may come back and hear this later is give yourself permission and take the time that you need. Just don't take too long.
Yeah,
And it's okay to not show up to things that you don't feel comfortable showing up to.
yeah,
Because, oftentimes people don't want to answer questions. Go ahead.
yeah. I was gonna say, and grief, it doesn't need to be rushed, but it definitely has to be respected.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good. It doesn't have to be rushed, but it
Mm-hmm.
has to be respected.
Yeah,
That's good. That's good. And I think on both sides. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I
yeah.
think, I was just sitting there thinking about that. Like the people on this side, you got to respect my grief.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't tell me you think I should. You still dealing with this? And it's been 6 months?
yeah,
You're
yeah,
not over. Like, oh, you haven't went back to work yet? Or
yeah,
when you coming back to work?
yeah, yeah,
And I know you mentioned that earlier. Man, do I wish there was some sort of like I was blessed going through my grieving process with my job, my employer at the time, because they didn't rush me.
hmm,
They allowed me to ease my way back in.
yeah,
And when I say ease my way back in, 2 days a week for a couple of weeks,
yeah,
then 3 days a week
yeah,
for a couple of more weeks,
hmm,
until I gradually was back. Even when I went back to 5 days, I didn't work 8 hours straight.
yeah. That was
I
a
was working a
blessing.
half day. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
that
was
was a blessing.
definitely, because I understand that came up, that this discussion came up, I think maybe two conversations ago, that people who are grieving, they're expected to come back. So they give you 3 days,
Yeah,
depending on the relationship, you may
right.
get
I
a
was
week.
gonna say that. Yeah. Hmm.
And I just, I really think until they've had to deal with it, they don't understand
No.
how tough it is to try to wrap this thing up
Yeah.
and get back
Yeah.
to work.
Yeah. And I just feel so much compassion for those who can't even take off.
I know.
Yeah. Who have
Yeah.
to go right back to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, what I will say is it has been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you on tonight.
Thank you.
And I truly believe that someone will be helped with hearing this conversation, whether they heard it tonight, fresh, live, hot off the press, or whether someone catches the replay. I believe that their lives will begin to take a turn and begin to they will become stronger because they will realize that they need to have boundaries and that it's okay to say no. It's okay to move at a certain pace as long as they're moving and protecting themselves, taking those moments to count those little small joys. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to do what will best honor the person that you have lost. And
Yeah.
so Thank you so much to
Welcome.
our guest tonight, Miss
You're
Kelly
welcome.
Buffalo Taylor, from
Thank you for
taking
having
time
me.
out of her busy schedule. I rushed her, y'all, 30 minutes early. My
I was
fault.
like, what is she doing? But okay.
Jesus. You should have told me, because that would have helped both of us out, sister.
It would have,
I don't know
yes.
what I was thinking, but thank you so much,
You're welcome.
for putting time aside tonight to come and help all of us out.
You're
And so
welcome.
thanks a bunch. And we will see you all next month. Please feel free to join us at our next month's grief support, which will be not the first Saturday. I don't think. Let me check my calendar, y'all, before I give you the wrong date. Want to make sure that we get there. Actually, it is July 5th at 11 o'clock. Join us for our grief support. If you have more questions, please inbox me or follow us on Empowering Kingdom Growth. Again, thank you so much to our guests, and we will see you all next time.
Take
God bless.
care.
Uh-huh.
Enjoy. Bye
Uh-huh.
bye.
Bye-bye.